Hillary Clinton formally accepting the Democratic nomination for president this past week, but many are saying Republican nominee Donald Trump may have stolen the spotlight. Since Clinton, President Obama, Vice President Biden, and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg focused their speeches on attacking Trump. Joining me now to react is Eric Trump. He is the Executive Vice President of Development and Acquisitions for the Trump Organization and the son of Donald Trump. Good to see you, Eric.
Always great being with you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Great,
what a week. A lot of attacks, a lot of vitriol against your father. What is your reaction to what we heard?
Yeah, well, first of all, they're all career politicians. I was laughing last night. I mean, it's career politician after career politician after career politician, right? I mean, this is the problem in the country, right? It's people who have been in the same spot, who have tried the same things over and over. I mean, if you look at Hillary, when she spoke a couple nights ago, she didn't even mention the real problems, right? She never once mentioned ISIS. She didn't mention radical Islamic terrorism. You're having people go into, clubs in Orlando. You're having people shoot up streets. You're having people in trucks in Nice mow down. I mean, the attacks goes on and on. A couple days ago, you had a priest in France who was beheaded in his own church. And she didn't even mention ISIS. She didn't mention the trade imbalance last month that we had, which was $63 billion. $63 billion, the $19 trillion worth of national debt that we have. I mean, these are the real problems that are plaguing this country. Not a single one was mentioned. Yet, she just sat there and tried to demonize, my father. And it's a really, really interesting tactic, and I don't think it's going to work.
I was surprised that the issue did not come up, and I did see a lot of conversation about that on social media. People were upset. But they also want more specifics from Donald Trump. They want to know what your father's plan is. Do you think we're going to get more substance and more specifics in terms of how to defeat ISIS from your side?
Yeah, listen, there's no question about it. I mean, I think he spent a lot of time talking about it. I think, first of all, the other side's not even willing to talk about it. So you've got to start there. You've got to actually acknowledge the problem. And I think he has been pretty, forceful with it. I mean, starting with, locking down our borders, starting by, going in and actually doing real background checks on the people who are coming into this nation, starting by telling, the whole world that he's not going to allow, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees that we can't vet, into this country. And, and then also giving the same parallel and going back to Germany, and you see the problems that Germany's having, right? Where they're letting, millions of refugees into that country, and then you see all these problems that are popping up all over the place, which is really, almost why the country is in a state of anarchy lately, because of this. So, I actually think he has been pretty specific on so many of the things he's going to do, and listen, he's going to get a lot more specific as, as we reach November.
Let me ask you about your father's response to a lot of this, because obviously he was a big topic of conversation this past week at the Democratic Convention. One of the reasons is the press conference that he gave, where he said, look, Russia, let's find those 30,000 emails that Hillary Clinton deleted. Right after that, the other side pounced, basically saying that's irresponsible. That's dangerous to invite Russia to do perhaps even more hacking.
Isn't that amazing that they say that's irresponsible, that's dangerous, when all those 33,000 emails were supposed to be about yoga and, the hairstylist?
But is it irresponsible to ask Russia out and out to come and hack America?
First of all, I think it's kind of tongue-in-cheek what he said, and I think it was pretty sarcastic.
He said it was sarcastic.
Second of all, I think it's really interesting. The first time that you'd ever heard President Obama talk about cybersecurity, at least that I'd ever heard President Obama talk about security, was when the DNC gets hacked. Companies like ours, companies like every single hotel company in the world, every major corporation, every single day, people from around the world, whether it be Russia, whether it be China, so many perpetrators are breaking into companies, trying to steal personal information, trying to steal credit card information, right? Trying to steal trade secrets, intellectual property. It costs our nation trillions and trillions of dollars a year. And the first time that President Obama talks about cybersecurity was when the DNC gets hacked. And quite frankly, is totally embarrassed, because so many of the things in the DNC emails were totally inappropriate. I mean, one of those things, Maria, was about our own company, right? It's, let's go put fake job postings on Craigslist, pretending we're the Trump Organization, soliciting, young women who are very good looking. Let's see if we can embarrass. I mean, these are sick people. Yeah. To think about that, these are sick people.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, is your father missing an opportunity to stay on message and stick to the issue? Because actually, the other side was very effective in turning this into a Russia story. But the actual story was that the Democrats, basically, Bernie never had a shot. And they made it, so difficult for Bernie Sanders and his supporters to have any ground. Yeah. And yet, your father may have fallen for it.
Listen, and I feel for Bernie. I mean, I know how hard this process is, having lived it for the last year. I mean, it's the most grueling, hard process. Say what you will, but Bernie believed. He's like my father in that way. And they might be on opposite sides of the aisle, but Bernie believed. And to go in there and you see, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who had totally rigged it, obviously for Hillary, and they've been best friends, and you look at the relationship with Kaine and everything else to the DNC, it was totally a rigged system. Bernie didn't have a shot.
I got to ask you about his comments on NATO as well as an economy that really, once again, Friday we saw a horrible GDP number. But in terms of NATO, people are wondering, he said, look, all NATO countries have to pay their fair share. People are questioning the or else. Are we going to be dissolving our NATO relationship? What is he trying to say with regard to NATO?
I think he's been very clear, right? Of the 28 countries in NATO, only 5 pay their way. 5 pay their way. So the U.S. taxpayer is paying a disproportional burden of NATO. In fact, it's paying the vast majority of NATO, right? So, I mean, we've become the world's police force, and we pay for that, and our tax dollars pay for that. At the same time, our national deficit is $19 trillion and climbing quickly. We have roads that are falling apart. We have schools that are falling apart. I mean, you and I walk through LaGuardia probably every single week, right? I mean, you'll have TSA screening machines, and you'll have literally a tarp above them with a little tube going into a bucket because our roofs are leaking in our major infrastructure in our biggest cities in this nation. It's a disgrace. My father's whole point with NATO is everybody's got to pay. If they want that protection, you have to pay for that protection. I mean, you can't have a one-way street where you have this allegiance of 28 people, but only 5 of those countries are actually paying their way. That's just not fair.
On the economy, we know Donald Trump's tax plan includes a 15% corporate tax rate, which obviously would be really positive for businesses who want to hire and put that money back to work. But the trade part of his economic plan is being questioned. Are we going to see increasing tariffs or tariffs on the countries that we have been enjoying free trade with? Isn't that going to make the economy, which is growing at a snail's pace? We just got a horrible GDP report on Friday. Doesn't that make things more difficult?
He wants to bring jobs back to this country, right? He wants to bring jobs back to this country. Now, someone will argue, okay, well, a product might be 2 cents more, but the difference is people will actually be able to afford to buy them because they'll have jobs. Between 2000 and 2015, I talk about this point all the time, we've lost 1/3 of our manufacturing in this country. I mean, think about that. 1/3 of our jobs have left this country, manufacturing jobs have left this country. They've gone to China, they've gone to Mexico, they've gone to other places. I mentioned it earlier, right? We had a $63 billion trade imbalance last month. In the month of June, we had a $63 billion trade imbalance. We're getting ripped off by the entire world. I mean, our trade deficit with China is almost $500 billion.
But does that mean tariff? I mean, if you're going to raise tariffs, you're going to put new tariffs in place. Doesn't that make products more expensive for the average guy?
I don't think he wants to put new tariffs in. I think he's willing. I think he's willing to if he has to.
Eric, final question here. What a moment in the sun you had. A lot of people, really praised you and your brothers and sisters for really doing well for your father at the Republican National Convention. How was it for you, getting up to that podium and speaking to tens of millions of people? It
was surreal. I mean, first of all, I build hotels for a living, right? I mean, this is, politics is obviously a new game for us, and but it was amazing to see the patriotism in that room, to see the American flags, to see the people going, crazy. I mean, it was a lot of fun. And then, more importantly, to speak on behalf of somebody you love tremendously, and there's no one in the world that knows, my father better than I do, and he will do an amazing job, and I say this time and time again, he will do such an amazing job. And so if I can contribute in my small way to going out there and kind of reinforcing the man that he is and the father he's been, it was an honor to be on that stage.
How did Hillary Clinton do?
Listen, I think she tried to demonize my father. I think her whole speech last night was trying to demonize my father, and it's kind of ironic given her checkered past. I mean, we don't need a 3rd term of Obama. We don't need more national debt. We don't need more of the problems that we've had. We don't need more public corruption. We need somebody to go in and blow up Washington, D.C., and you need an outsider to do it. I mean, you really need somebody that stops the games within the Beltway, because it's, I've been exposed to it over the last 12 months like I've never saw before when I was kind of, not part of this process, and it is disgusting. I mean, honestly, our political system is just, it's broken in ways that I could have never imagined.
It is pretty extraordinary. Eric Trump, great to see you.
Great being with you, Maria.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Always great.
Eric Trump.